In this tutorial, I'll look at some basic workflow in Nuke, reading in footage, saving Nuke files, and writing out sequences. I'll start out in a blank flow here, clicking in the node graph and pressing R to read in a file. I'm in a Maya project, and we can see the different render passes in the images directory. I'm going to bring in Chapel BTY, frames 1 through 120, and it's an IFF. We can see down at the bottom of this dialog that sequences are checked, meaning that 120 images actually show up as one file. I'll click Open. What we see then is that beauty pass of a chapel is shown with a postage stamp, and the read node in the top right shows where it is, how big it is, if we're using a proxy or smaller image, and what happens before and after. So if we need to loop footage, for example, I'll either click and drag the drag line or the arrow from the viewer to show it, or with any object selected in Nuke, press 1 to show it in Viewer 1. We can lay out things by selecting them and pressing L for Layout. I'll pull the screen down a little bit to make the monitor bigger. In the monitor window, F fits the composition. H fills it. The difference is in the magnification. Fit fits to an even multiple, in this case half size. Fill goes at 1.3. So what we may see are some oddly aliased edges, such as the back corner here, which is really a function of magnification, not understrength anti-aliasing. I'll press R to read again, and I'll bring in the ambient occlusion pass. In Nuke, our workflow is A over B. With any object selected, pressing M for merge puts that object into the A node of the merge. We can connect the B to the beauty pass and press 1 to see that merge. I'll select the merge, or double-click on it, and we can see it up here in the top in the properties. I'll set the operation for the merge to multiply. These are a lot of our standard blending modes here, and math operations. Then I'll mix it, or blend it back, lowering its opacity. Now my ambient occlusion is clearly defining the detail in the space, without really darkening all the corners. My rendering is ready. I can assume in the flow that I would use color correction and so forth, but I'll get in a write node first and write out a sequence. I'll press W for write, and it puts a write node after the multiply. In the write node, I need to pick where it goes and what file type I'm using. The general operation is to do sequences in and out, and that way we're working in an uncompressed workflow. We can also use uncompressed AVIs or QuickTime movies. I'll write out uncompressed files and then use Adobe After Effects, for example, or the Adobe Media Encoder to encode them as a Windows Media file. I'm going to put the rendered files here into the Maya project, and I'll make a new directory. I'll call this Renders. Now I'm going to go into the Renders directory and click Save. What I need to do is to choose a name and put in pound signs for frame padding. I'll call this Chapel. And I'll put in ### for example. It's important to put in the frame extension and the pound signs for frame padding so you can correctly render a sequence. Alternately, if I change the file type, for example, to let's say an EXR or a DPX, as is common in a film workflow, I would still need to put in that padding and that extension on the end. Now I'll hit render. Nuke shows that it's going to render the frame range input from 1 to 120. I'll click OK, and it'll render out my frames, which I can later compress. The big thing in Nuke to remember, it's A over B, and you have to tell it what to show. It will only show as far as you've told Viewer 1 to look. So if you're putting on a node and you're not seeing it, make sure you select it and hit 1. My render is done, and now I've got a sequence of frames of the beauty pass and the occlusion pass composited together.